There's only one game on Thursday, so I'm not going to do a recap show for that. But let's talk about some other things, some waiver wire trends, and a few little peeks at what has happened with shooting this season. Also, updates, injuries, Memphis. You're going to want to hear it. Michael Bolton, he already knows. He's a bit cheeky like that.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NBA fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and Big Boom AJ is all elite. And I'm also the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com. And you can find me on Blue Sky at joshloyd.bsky.social. You can find me on TikTok at redrock_Beeble and on Instagram at LockedOnFantasyBasketball. Yes, I am still on Twitter, but I am going to be posting on Blue Sky as well. And I do eventually want everyone to be able to migrate over there. I'm also, I said the lead fantasy analyst. I said that part already. What am I doing? I just got distracted. I've got to work that new intro in. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get $150 in bonus bets when you win your first $5 bet with FanDuel, starting the season with a big return. Go to FanDuel.com to get started. Also go to LockedOnDaily.com for the newsletter for your favorite team. All of the information that you need packaged in there nicely every day, 5 days a week. Thumb it up, double bang. Let us go. We're ready to talk about some interesting stuff here. Again, just a weird day. And there's more weird schedule stuff coming tomorrow. I want to give a couple of updates on things though. Since I recorded the preview show for tomorrow, a couple of things have happened. Bradley Beal has been ruled out. So our O'Neal and Dunn streams are there. Grayson Allen is questionable still. Nikola Jokic, Big Chungus. He is listed as questionable for personal reasons. I wouldn't know who they would start. They've been running weird lineups with either Zeke Naji or DeAndre Jordan because Aaron Gordon, who plays center, and Daron Holmes, they're out, so they're not playing. And Vlatko Čančar has been dealing with this ankle thing. I don't think you need to worry. It's likely just a one-game thing for Jokic, and you're in a situation where there are 12 games on. I wouldn't scramble to find the replacement. I just, in most cases, I wouldn't worry unless you're talking DFS stuff, and then at the moment, I think they'll probably go with DeAndre Jordan, and that makes him useful enough. The other thing that just dropped is Memphis dropped a big one on us. Desmond Bane is ready to return. He's not officially in, but he didn't even get the doubtful tag that Marcus Smart and Vince Williams got. He's questionable for Friday's game. Williams is also questionable. So while I thought we'd get maybe a week or so of Williams getting a real boost here with no Morant, no Bane, we don't get that. And now their rotation is incredibly tough to figure out. I did it and I put it in and went, oh my God, I've got 280 minutes here and 12 players. So I had to cut. So there are going to be players that are starting Jalen Wells, Santi Aldama, Scottie Pippen, or Jay Huff. And then there's Luke Kennard and Jake LaRavia. Guys, Kennard not so much, but the other guys who have been like 12-team usable that will not be. Because you were going to get probably 28 minutes of Bane, I'd guess, first game back. Maybe 21 minutes of Vince. And I'm not sure that Vince is the super, super best grab right now. Like I did think that it was worth grabbing because I thought he'd be back and he'd get 2 weeks of nice numbers without Bane, but now I'm not sure. I think he's a better player than Aldama. I think he's actually more important for their future. But I think he might actually top out with a low upside here, Vince Williams. But the guys you're getting something out of, Jalen Wells, again, Smart, Pippen, LaRavia, Aldama, it might end like now. Don't drop Pippen. I do think Aldama might be expendable. We'll see what they do with Huff, Clark, and Edey. It is going to be a really intriguing rotation to watch. See what happens with Smart. And honestly, there are so many directions they can go that I just don't know. Obviously, you add Bane if somehow he's available. I don't mind adding Williams, and I think Williams will be better than Aldama, and Wells, and LaRavia. Maybe Pippen. That one I'm not sure about. Vince theoretically could play 30 minutes a night in a week's time. But there's a lot of different names there, man. And it is going to get very, I don't know if confusing is the right word. It's close enough to being the right word that we just don't know. Like, there are legitimately 12 guys. I'm not even talking about, like, Lil John Conche. Yeah. Oh, that was bad, wasn't it? Yeah. It's better. It's close. Lil John Conchar, does he even play? I don't know, man. It is a very, very confusing and tight rotation with some of these guys. Wells has been starting. Does he just go to 0 minutes now? I guess he could. We're not rostering him in 12s, and I think, again, if I had to drop, Laravia, clearly, I would keep Pippen over Aldama. I would use Williams over Aldama, at least for a longer-term view at it. But that could be wildly wrong. Wildly wrong. Before we get into the main part of this show, I did want to have a look at some waiver wire trends over the last 48 hours who have been the most added players using our Basketball Monster numbers. And number one added is Jared McCain. Well, he did it again last game. And the rains are coming. Is that the same ad? Is McCain the rains are coming ad? Australians, the rains are coming. Yeah? That's that McCain? Or have I lost it? Maybe I've lost it. Who cares? Anyway, Jared McCain. Cooked last game. Has he any shot of doing this in not the next one? Because I think he'll still be okay. But do they start him over Lowry? And then the problem with Jared McCain, I think, on this team is that how do you start him and Tyrese Maxey together? Two small, no defense point guards. How do they work together in the backcourt? They are small. I don't know how that works. And while I loved McCain in the draft at that spot, I had him 16. I mocked him to Philadelphia. That was the one that I got dead on the nose all the way through. I don't know how it fits long term. I got no idea how they can work together. So yeah, people have added McCain, and I get it. You want to chase the big games, and adding him before the game that George and Embiid were out was the better move, but we'll see. Skepticism. Leaky Beasley. Tim Hardaway is going to be out again. Fontecchio's doubtful. So yeah, look, totally. He might do 3 points on 11%. Totally possible too. But it is worth looking at. Yves Missi, one of the most added players. 2 back-to-back double-doubles. First one was better than the second one. He's still, I find, really limited and low upside, but that's okay. He's fine. Grant Williams is one that I like. They've got a really good schedule coming up. He's putting up nice numbers. He'll have some duds, absolutely, but he's worth a look. And then the last two, this is, again, we talked about this confusion yesterday. The 5th most added player is Rob Williams, and the 6th is Donovan Clingan. And let me tell you, I don't think both of them are going to be able to do it. And they don't play till Sunday now. And starting from today, they've got 2 games in the next 7 days. Sorry, starting from Friday. So, I don't know. Will they play 17 minutes, 14 minutes between the 3 centers? Seems impossible, yeah? Does Rob Williams play at the 4? Maybe. Adding those guys is okay. Clingan is the longer-term guy, but he might play 12 minutes next game. He might play 13. And you've got to sit on it and sit on it and sit on it. And while you might be used to sitting on it, it can be tough in a fantasy scenario, and you need to look at how you're able to do that in your team. Don't mind doing it until Sunday. We're still only in week 4. But both of those ads won't work, I'm pretty sure. Unless we get word that DeAndre Ayton's lost his finger or something. Which, again, maybe. Who knows? Let's talk about who's been dropped, the most dropped players over the last 48 hours. Number 1 is relatively obvious. It's Jose Alvarado. Cool, move on. Absolutely a clear jack. Get that garbage out of here. He's just out for too long. Trey Mann. Yep. He will be on and off rosters all season, I think, but he's dealing with a back problem. He's dealing with Brandon Miller being back and LaMelo Ball playing, and that makes it a harder stash. So you can't really do it. The big avocado, Andre Drummond, dropped. He missed last game anyway, and that was with Embiid out. You had no reason to hold on to Andre Drummond. Brandon Podziemski dropped. Now, I talked about this on the earlier preview show about DeAnthony Melton's sprained ACL, and Podziemski is going to benefit. We'll talk about him a little bit more later on in this show. Spoiler alert. Not a spoiler, it's a tease. But I'm not sure he actually gets to do enough to be a must-roster 12. You can add him, absolutely, right? No problem doing that. You'd obviously add him over Moody and Payton without any question. And he's going to have to do ball handling now that Melton's not there as well. But it doesn't mean that Kerr's going to give him 20 or 32 minutes a night. He could, but it doesn't mean that he is. He was dropped, and it's obviously the right decision. But we'll see whether it makes sense to re-add him. I'm not certain. Kelly Oubre dropped. Yeah, he's bad. Very clear drop. No problem with that. And then Keyshawn George, who I would have held. And if he was dropped, I'd find a way to see if it makes sense to add. You don't have to. I don't think he's going to be blowing us away top 50 or anything like that. But I do think he's probably worth carving out a little bit of space on your team's roster to see if you can See if you can fit him in. I think there's a little bit of something there about old mate Keyshawn. We're going to come back and we're going to talk about the players that have regressed and progressed in shooting this season. But firstly, today's episode is brought to you by Robinhood. With Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to set up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood, as my screen disappears. What's happened here to my screen? What's going on? Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and the perks that are usually reserved for the high society. Now, the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.25% APY on uninvested cash and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on IRA account contributions. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply. For product-specific disclosures, visit robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rate may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC. Okay. So, what I wanted to do in this show is go through shooting changes. Now, we do this on the buy low and sell high shows, but I wanted to cover off what's happened so far into the season because let's have a look. What's the actual number? We are 14% through the NBA season. So that is a seventh. About a seventh of the way through the season. And while these numbers don't stabilize yet, we've got a bit of a way to go. It is just worth looking at who is wildly up, wildly down, will it hold, and what does that mean for the remaining 6/7 of the season? And these players that you think suck, or these players that you think are cooking, could there be changes happening? And if in nearly all of the cases, the answer is yes. So let's talk about it. Let's look at just field goal percentage as a whole. The 6 biggest, and it's not the 6 biggest across the NBA. I went from top to bottom in changes and found that's not fantasy relevant. Jeff Green's hit 1 shot. Why do I care? Right, let's find the guys who actually are in discussion for 90% of fantasy leagues and where their field goal percentage has been. The number 1 player on this list is the passport legend Jalen Duren. His field goals were great last season, 62%. He's up to 82. So, Duren, who I think overall has been disappointing, is somehow well above performance on field goals, which is very scary to me. Very scary. Because if he goes back to shooting 63, then what's he giving you? Because everything else has been bad. The minutes haven't been where you wanted. He gets pulled off the court, giggity, at times for defense. His free throws, which we'll talk about later, they've regressed. It's a little worrying to me that he is actually cooking at that high of a number, and still we're going, pretty disappointing, yeah? That's a bit annoying. That's a bit scary. Ochai Agbaji shot 41% last season. I made the foolish comment, not foolish, accurate, that he shot well in college and just can't shoot in the NBA. Because literally 41% is horrible for a shooter. And this season, dominating, 57%, but that is also a red flag. Now, the good thing here is that by the time Agbaji cools off, Barnes is going to be back, and he's not going to be useful for most leagues anyway. But at the moment, he is doing the thing that you love. The opportunity increases, and at the same time, he's marrying that with a shooting hot streak, which is how you get immense fantasy value, and that's what he's doing. It's also how you can miss, from my perspective, in terms of how do I look at a guy, this guy's a great ad? Because I can say, well, yeah, Agbaji might get more minutes, but the bloke just doesn't really do much, and then he's gone, right, cool, Josh, I've got double the minutes, and I'm also going to shoot 60% from the field because why not? And that's what gives you that huge boost. It's hard to see it coming, but when it happens, it's when you really notice it. Josh the Hitman Hart is actually shooting unbelievably as well. Last game he was down, but he was at 43 from the field last season. He's up to 58 this season. I know he's playing a lot at the 4, but I find it very hard to believe that Josh Hart will be a 58% shooter. So the reality is probably not 43, but 51, 52, 6 percentage points is significant. Because with some of these players, like Josh Hart, we could be looking at it and their best fantasy category might be, it might be their field goal percentage. I don't actually know what it is for Hart. I'm going to take a look. But if Josh Hart's best fantasy category, which is driving his ranks for category leagues, and remember, in points leagues, even if your league does not count efficiency has an impact. It's the hidden impact. It's the silent killer that you don't see the number, but it's impacting you. So Hart, let's have a look what his actual biggest fantasy contributing category is. It is rebounds, actually. Rebounds, assists, and field goals in that order. Interesting, because his volume's low. But if 58%, and it's 62% over his last 7 games, goes down to 59, 53, it's from 13 points a game, he goes down to 11. What's he making? How many shots per game is he making? 5.1. Last season, he made 3.6. That's 3 points a game. That's 10 a game. And then he's not a top 50 guy. He's a top 80 guy or a top 90 player. So, yeah, it's going to drop. Bilal Coulibaly. Bilal Coulibaly is in, guess which percentile he is at finishing at the rim this season. You'll never guess. He's literally the best rim finisher in the entire NBA. He's at 88% at the rim. 88%. So, yeah, like his numbers are going to drop. He was at 43.5% last season. Field goal percentage is at 56 this season. And we saw last game he really struggled. There is no way that this man is the best rim finisher. 88 is, I think Prime Shaq was 72? Yeah, no way. The Bilal is 88%. None. And what that means, we either get just a slow run of him at 60. League average is 66 at the rim. Maybe he runs at 67 or 63 for a bit. Or you get a week stretch where he's at 50% for 3 weeks and brings it back down. It's not holding. Right? And a lot of what he has been doing is based on this high field goals. And we've also seen when he doesn't hit shots, he just stops taking them and doesn't do anything else. So I'm not predicting the Bilal is going to be a drop, but I'm predicting I'm going to get those questions in 3 weeks. Jake LaRavia, we just talked about him with the Grizzlies. He's at 50.6 on his field goals. He was at 39 last season. And that one's a big rise, clearly, and he's been playing well. But part of it, again, like with Abaji, the opportunity's there, and then he says, all right, I'm going to shoot now. All right, cool. He's going to lose everything basically here. Maybe his family and his house will stay, but like his shooting numbers and his fantasy value is going to disappear. But it is worth noting that. And the last one is Karis LeVert, who's also playing really well. 42% last season, which is low. Like he could be 46, 47. 53 this season. So there's a long way for that to regress as well. So while LeVert is fine at the moment, the worrying sign, and this is part of why I was worried with LeVert early in the season, is instead of playing 28 minutes, he's playing 24. And while in 24, when you're shooting 59, 54, 53%, that's fine. You can get by. If that gets back to normal and you're still playing 24 minutes, well, you got no hope. And that's sort of the worry I'm going to say. You should have at least some concern with Dracarys about being able to maintain that. And that's what all of this is about. It's a lot of foresight. It's about don't count your chickens. It's about how do I sell high, buy low. It's about what's happening now. Is this real? What will I do with this? And sometimes the old STP, LTG that you got to consider. What about the other side? Who's shit? Who can't shoot? You'll be shocked to know that Denny Avdija is the biggest faller. Now, I don't think Denny is a great player. You know this, right? But I'm also going to be, and this is what I try to bring to this show. I try to work extraordinarily hard. I try to make sure nobody outworks me, but I also try to make sure that there is understanding and nuance, and the bias that you might think is there is not there. Because I don't think Denny's as good as some people think. I'm very clear about that. But also, he's way better than this. He's not a 36% shooter. So he's way better than this. So while, yeah, Denny's a drop, clearly, he's going to improve. He's at 34.6 from the field. Alex Caruso, also a drop. Not because he's shooting 30.9, but because he's playing 21 minutes a night. He's also hurt now, again, shockingly. He was at 47 last season, Caruso. That is a gigantic fall-off. So there is going to be a surge from Caruso. Same with Avdija. I'm not sure they're going to be must-roster players, though, but also, at times, and I don't think this is the case with Dagnott, but it probably is with Billups, Avdija's shot isn't going in, so he goes, well, you're bad, so you're not playing anymore. And that then drops the playing time, and if the shots go in, maybe he says, okay, now you're good again, let's play. The next guy here is Grayson Allen. Allen's concern for me this season was, yes, he wouldn't shoot 46% from three, but also the minutes would cut down, and that has obviously played out, and he's made it way worse by shooting 34.7% from the field. He was at 50 last season, and 50 was way too high. That wasn't going to hold, but also Grayson Allen's not a bad shooter. Clearly, that's literally does. So he's going to improve, and he's going to improve in a pretty big way. And while Beal and Durant are out, I think having Allen is fine for now. That shooting at that level won't hold. And I know that we've also said that Mike Conley's very hard to hold. He is. But I think our opinions will change when he's not shooting 31%. Conley was at 45.7. And yeah, like, he's old. We know that. It is just very hard. It's very hard for a player to go through a season or a prolonged period of time shooting 31%. It just doesn't happen unless you're Taylor Horton Tucker. It's just not a thing that happens. You can't continue to do that. He's hitting 32 on his twos and 31 on his threes, Conley. Like, he's bringing, what's his assist number at? 4.7 and 1.4 steals, which is okay. It's not enough to maintain you holding him, but 7 points a game on 31% is horrendous. And that is going to improve. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope has been a bust, I would say, as a signing for the Magic so far. Long way to go, obviously. But he's also, as much as I don't love him from a fantasy point of view, he's way better than this. Like, he's not a 34% shooter. He's at 33.7. He was at 46 last season, and that's reasonable. Even if it's 43, it's reasonable. It's 10 percentage points. It would turn him more into a stream guy than the guy that's just useless as it is. But there's going to be a reversion here. And the last one is Zion Williamson. I never thought I'd be talking about that, but he's out, and he's out for a while, so he doesn't get a chance to correct it. 57 last season. He was at 60% in previous seasons. So even last year was a dip. And this year, 45. So, yeah, like, it's annoying that he's out. This could last forever, and it could be another disaster season for Zion. But he was definitely going to improve this and definitely going to turn that shooting around. And now I don't know when that chance comes for him. Hopefully, it's right on the 6 weeks, but you never know, I guess. We've got more percentage fallers to check out in a sec, but today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Get ready to tackle all of the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything that you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So, in the middle of the game, when you get a hunch, you can check out all the latest stats, all the play-by-play, everything happening all on that same screen where you place those live NFL bets. I don't know what the bets might be, but whatever it is, the stats are going to be there to back up what you see and get ready to put those bets on. And FanDuel will give you $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet as well. So never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And don't forget to gamble responsibly. So before we get into talking about the rest of the fallers, and you won't be able to access this information, as it's happening because the game's about to start, but both Dallas and Utah made interesting starting lineup changes today. The Mavericks, Quentin Grimes replaced Kyrie Irving. We thought that might happen. See what happens. You might stream Grimes for the weekend, but I think Hardy and Dinwiddie still do a little bit. But the interesting one is Derek Lively started over Daniel Gafford. Now, I still think they're both clear must-roster players, but if it goes 30 minutes to Lively and 18 to Gafford, then Gafford becomes a harder hold. But they made the switch, so that is important to watch. The other one is that they started Maxi Kleber instead of Najee Marshall. Now, again, that's a short-term thing. Kleber's not going to be able to play big minutes, and PJ is going to be back probably next game. But that is a change they made, and we'll see where that leads us. The other one is maybe arguably more interesting in Utah. Cody Williams got benched because he does nothing. And they started Kyle Filipowski. So Filipowski's at the 4 and Markkanen's at the 3, and Filipowski's got a very good fantasy game. I would add him if I could. It does help that Kessler's out, because that means that Collins doesn't play any at the 4, and you're going to get like Eubanks and a bit of Filipowski backing up at the 5. But this is maybe 30 minutes a night for Filipowski coming up here. And you've got the 3 games in 4 nights as well. You're going to miss Thursday's game, but we already talked about him as an interesting stream guy anyway. And now he is starting over Cody Williams. And if Filipowski starts, and he's a 27-minute-a-night player, I don't know that he will be, I'm interested in taking a flyer on that. I am. It might not work. They might start him, and then he goes to 22 minutes, and then it's back to Williams, and then it's Collins playing 29, him playing 20, whatever. That all might happen. But we like to take chances. Cody Williams never wanted to take a chance on it. Never had the fantasy profile for it to work. Filipowski does. So we'll see what he's allowed to do and who he's allowed to interact with on the court and what stats he's allowed to put up. But it's very interesting to be able to grab Kyle in this in this spot. More percentage fallers and risers now. We'll dig into a little bit of the details of the field goal percentage and see like how this stuff happens. So look at 2-point percentage. The biggest riser, Josh Hart, 74% on his twos. So we talked about him already. The field goals weren't going to stick. Like, all right, mate, you're not holding at 74. It's not happening. He was at 51 last season. It's not happening. So we know there is a sizable regression coming from Josh. Sizable. Nobody becomes that good of a finisher as a 4/3/undersized, whatever he is. Jalen Duren. Talked about him in the field goals. He's at 82 from the 2-point area. He doesn't shoot threes, obviously. We already said that. It's not sticking. He's not an 8. No one's 82. Nobody. 74, 75, I'd say maybe. 82, no way. It's just not going to be able to hold. Chris Dunn, who I do think is an ad, but not on the basis of this. 70% shooting from 2. He was at 53 last season. Maybe he's a 54-5 guy. That's fine. But it's going to come down. But we're rostering him for some threes, but rebounds, assists, steals, out of position blocks. Bilal is at 65 on his twos. I talked about his 88% rim finishing, which is clearly insane and clearly won't hold. He's at 65. The league average rim percentage is 66, and his 2-point percentage from all twos is the same. There's no way. 50% last season. Generously make it 55. It's dropping in a very big way. Keon Ellis. He hasn't taken many shots, and he was at 58 last season, so he could be a mid to high 50s 2-point player. He's at 72. Again, much like with Chris Dunn, though, we don't care that much. It's useful, but we don't care. It's about getting steals and blocks and getting playing time. And Ellis has a chance now, with DeRozan doubtful and with Monk out, to at least get a little bit more playing time, to get some starts in and to be streamable. And his teammate is also flying up. But we know this with Herter. We know what happens. He was at 57% last season in Fanta Pants, and Kevin Herter's at 71% now. So it's got, like, even 57 for Herter seems high, although he has had some 60% 2-point seasons in the past. Just expect a regression there. The 2-point percentage droppers. Number 1 is Grayson Allen. So it's not his threes that didn't work. His twos don't work. 37.5% on twos. That's a comically bad number. That's 20% lower than last season. He is going to fly back up. Lauri Markkanen. I hate having Lauri Markkanen on my team, and that's why I don't in any head-to-head leagues. Because, and people asked this the other day, no, I do not know this. No, it has not been announced. No, it will never be announced that Lauri will not play at the end of the season, nor any player. It will never be announced. It will never be official. But every single jigsaw piece, every bit of information that I hear that's not official, tells me that he won't play a single second in April, and he'll miss most of the end of March. So I don't want him in head-to-head leagues. But I know that he's going to be way better than this. Mike Conley's also at 32% on his twos. Well, he was at 48 last season. These are sizable differences. Jaime Jaquez surprised us all, shooting 56% last season on twos. He's down at 41, and while again, I am not a Jaime Jaquez guy, this is improving a lot. It's going over 50% without question, and that helps him. Hold it on Jaquez, because we'll talk more about some stuff later on with him. But that is changing 100%, and that will help him. He just needs more minutes. And then Leaky Beasley, 39%. That's very low. He's at 53 last season. He doesn't take many twos, we know this. He's got a real opportunity with Tim Hardaway out to be somewhat useful for a small period of time. But, yeah, that shooting's bad, and I do think it improves. And then Denny Avdia can't finish at all. 56% last season on his twos, and he's at 42 now. So again, we are going to get a big jump from Denny. Your 3-point guys, who's been the biggest 3-point surprise? And I include Larry Nance on this list because last game he played 27 minutes and he hit 5 threes. And that makes his line look better. He somehow shot 42% from 3 last season. He's shooting 74 this season. So yeah, I'm pretty confident that's not going to be a real thing for Larry Nance. Aaron Gordon, before his injury. And I tried not to include many players who were injured on these lists, but this was key. 29% from 3 last season, 55 this season. So while Aaron Gordon was putting together some really good games, it's based on a foundation of lies. He's not going to hold that. It's impossible for him to hold that. And the same goes with Big Chungus Nikola Jokic. Now, I went into a discussion, debate, rant, unhinged soliloquy yesterday about the debate about Jokic and Wemby at number 1. and talking about how people think that what happens right now, November 14th, is how it's going to happen for the rest of the season. And the decision of who you picked at number 1 is done and dusted. We already know the answer. It was clearly a mistake for Wemby, and Jokic was obviously the clear number 1, and he'll obviously remain that guy. And my thing on all of this stuff is, maybe. There's a long way to go. He's playing 38 minutes a night. Will that hold? I don't know. But also, let me tell you what won't hold, 56% shooting from 3. So to say what Jokic is doing right now is sustainable is a lie. It's a lie. It's not true. It won't hold at all. He shot 35.9 last season, Jokic. So he's 20 percentage points higher. So when that drops down, the field goals drop down, the scoring drops down, the three-pointers made drop down, he's not going to be bad. He will still probably be number 1. But the gigantic gap that we've got at the moment between 1 and 2, there's a lot of it that is fueled by 56% three-point shooting from Jokic. Ochai Agbaji, while he was dreadful last season at 29, he's at 48. That's also going to come back down. But again, it won't matter, most likely, because Barnes will be back, he'll cool off, and we'll forget we ever talked about Agbaji being a good player. You know who this one is. I'm glad we got him in here, the big fella. All-NBA center, MVP candidate, Nikola Vucevic. He shot 29.4% last season. You'll say, Josh, that's the outlier. He's a good shooter. And I'll say, is he? Is he? Go and have a look at his shooting numbers over his career. I think he had one 39% shooting season from 3, and then it's 32, 31, 30, 34, 33, 33. So, no, he's not a good shooter. He fooled you to think that he's a good shooter, but he's not. Now, 29%, I don't think he's that. Right? I think he's like a 33 or 34 guy. It's probably realistic. But again, when you say that what Nikola Vucevic is doing right now is sustainable, you are wrong. You are simply wrong. Vuce, I think if Vuce had his regular shooting percentages, his numbers this season would be worse than last season's. His numbers are going to fall. We are talking, 19 percentage points higher from 3 than last season? The last one, not 19, my bad. I miscalculated. 15. The next one is Jaime Jaquez. Because I talked about his 2s being dreadful, but now he's shooting 3s at a ridiculous rate. He was shot 32 on 3s last season. He's up to 47. Remember, at UCLA, he was a below average shooter. So actually things for Jaquez at the moment, they could be way worse. They could be way better. If he had his normal 2s and elevated 3s, he'd be looking way better. But what if he had his normal 3s plus the depleted 2s? He'd look dreadful. So he's in the middle at the moment. One of them's holding up, one of them's pulling down. But we're going to get changes. He's not going to stay as a 47% three-point shooter and was he a 38% two-point guy? That's not going to stick. 3-point drops. What about Jimmy Butler? Shot 41% last year. Low volume. He's at 15 this season. So while Jimmy's not a 40% guy, he's more of a I'll play 40% of the games of the season player. He's also not a 15% shooter. That's going to jump up. Again, I didn't really want to draft Jimmy anywhere this season. And so far, I think that decision so far has been justified. We'll see where it goes. Najee Marshall, he's a better shooter than we've seen. 39% last season. He's at 17. That's part of why this stream with him, with PJ out, has not worked. And Jason Kidd said, right, you missed shots the last 2 games. That must mean you're going to miss shots every other game moving forward. So we'll bench you. He will be better. Alex Caruso, 41% last season from 3. That was unlikely to be a real thing, but he's at 22 this season. So yeah, that's also unlikely to be a real thing. So there is going to be a sizable, I'd say, Caruso surge in his production. But if he doesn't get the minutes, it doesn't actually matter. Brandon Podziemski, Mr. 8 to 10 threes per night. He was at 39% last season on his 3s, and he's shooting 19.5. So this could be an interesting one. I talked about Melton being out and how Podziemski likely gets more minutes, but he could turn the minutes increase with a huge 3-point variance increase into a mirage of, look at this, what an absolute gun must-add player. He might not. He might continue to shoot horribly and play only 27 minutes a night. But there is, this isn't always how it works. But Podziemski, who played 15, 16 minutes last game, he could conceivably play 28 minutes in the next one, and he could go on a 2-week run of shooting 45% from 3 to bring him to 33% for the season. And it will look like, well, all it needed was Melton to be out and this guy cooked, when all it was a crazy change in shooting variance. So it is possible that happens. And understanding why something happens is a good way to understand how real it was or how your decision-making and all your processes went. The last one there is Ayo Dosunmu. I don't really buy him as a 40% guy, which is what he was last season, but he's also just unbelievably underperforming, 24.5% this season, Dosunmu. Last game was a step in the right direction, even though he only played 25 minutes. I still probably think to be a consistent 12-team league guy, he needs 30 minutes, and he's not getting it. But largely, he's just not shooting well. And I do think that is going to improve pretty sizably. On the free throw percentage side of things, to wrap this up, how about Ben Simmons? Look at this guy. The NBA's worst free throw shooter has decided that he's going to start shooting free throws. He was at an abominable 40% last season. Of course, Simmons didn't play very much last season. But would you have known? No, you wouldn't have. But would you have known that Ben Simmons is at 75% from the line this season? Probably not. Now, I put this here as sort of a laugh. He's taken 4 shots. 3 of 4 from the line. That's Al Horford volume. It's half a game. But it is interesting. Santi Aldama. The 62 last season was a very weird outlier from the line. Is this guy a shooter or not? And he said, screw it, I'm missing 1 for the season. And I don't know if that me saying he's missed 1 free throw is actually correct, but he's at 93%. It's a 30% increase. I talk a lot, just in general, but I talk a lot about this show about variance. It's one of the key things about this show. Variance in quality of what I talk about, but variance in terms of stats of fantasy basketball. And one of the things I will tell you is that free throws and free throw percentage actually is one of the highest. That and steals are the 2 highest variance categories. So you're seeing 30% change here from Aldama. I'm just going to double check how many he has actually missed. He's missed 1 free throw for the season. He's at 14 of 15. And that is a low volume thing. If you missed his next shot, and instead of being 14 of 15, he was 14 of 16, then you're talking, what's the number there? 7 of 8, which is like, what is that? 88. And then you miss again, and you're at 84. It doesn't take much, man. But at the moment, he's flying. Trey Mann, Cason Wallace, and Aaron Wiggins haven't missed a free throw this season, and all of them were under 80% last season. And all of them have had moments of being 12-team league players. But they're not perfect. They're not going to shoot this number. And we are going to see a drop-off pretty clearly. They're still streamable guys. But they are rolling with a level of just not missing anything. And the last one is Naz Reid. And I did feature him on the Buy Low, Sell High show, saying that all of his percentages were so far up, they were going to crash down. And his free throws are ridiculously up, 92.6. Last season, 73.6. It's 19 percentage points difference. Reid could very easily be an improved free throw guy, but 84 to 85 is probably more realistic. And we've already seen his inconsistencies, but if he goes on a stretch where that starts to fall back down, he will become not hard to roster, but you'll start to have that discussion of like, do I hold him? Because like it's going to look way worse. These players on the other side, though, have just dropped in their free throws. And is it there room to improve it? Chris Dunn, who we talked about his 2s jumping up, while he's at 37.5 from the line. He's not a good shooter. He's at 69% last season, giggity. That will improve. He's not good, though. PJ Washington, also, you know him, the king of sometimes maybe good, sometimes maybe shit. 68% last season, and that's what he is, around a 70% guy. He's at 37.5. Dreadful. And that's going to, when you're looking at traditional rankings, it's going to make him look way worse. That'll bump him up. Jalen Duren. Last season, the idea was, and again, one of many examples when be really cautious when someone says, well, I think this problem is fixed. Injuries, 3-point shooting, free throw shooting. Luka's another great one. Oh, he's fixed that problem. Has he? Or was it a 1-year thing? Because Jalen Duren went from 61%, I think, to 79 last season, and now he's back to 56. Was it a 1-year outlier? Possible. Is he going to be a variance player in that category? Yeah, almost definitely. So when we go in there and we try and bank on something like that, don't. Jaime Jaquez, man, just a lot of Jaime Jaquez talk here. Man can't hit 2s, hits every 3, and can't hit free throws. He went from 81 down to 60. So his entire existence at the moment is fake. It's all going to change. And that is important to note about Jaquez, who's been like bad this season. DeAndre Ayton, the snowman, he was at 82.3, and one of his big things was, as a big man, you are getting good free throws. Now, he's not like Duran where I have the level of doubt that he's bad, but maybe he wasn't an 82 guy, because he's at 62.5 this season. And now we worry about the bloody finger and how much he's going to play. And lastly, Mikal Bridges, what's going on? 64% from the line. It's very weird. It's very low. He was at 81 last season. Obviously, he has not gained any of the Phoenix form back. He looks just sort of like Brooklyn Bridges. But that will improve. And that will help him. Absolutely, that will help him to get those numbers back up. I hope that show was interesting. There's a lot of nonsense going on. Waiver wire trends, changes in Utah and Dallas, and a bunch of shooting percentages. And sometimes I think, how many of those did you know? How many of those numbers you go, wow, PJ Washington shooting 38? Jalen Duran's bad at free throws again? How many of those actual sort of massive changes did you know about? Because these are the things that are hidden in fantasy. We don't always see them, and they have a big impact. Give it the thumbs up. Give it a subscribe. I'll be back with a preview show tomorrow. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.